Welcome back, accounting boffins. Yes, we are busy analyzing a projected income statement. Let's look at the next question. And we are told here that that's the information. We're dealing with a bookkeeper, and the information that we have here is that comment on the control of the telephone. Let's just get that right. Okay, we're commenting on the telephone, where we are, yes dear, right, comment on the control of the telephone and the water and electricity. What advice would you offer to Zanele? State 1 point. Okay, firstly, look at the information that we are analyzing. We're looking at telephone, water and electricity, so that's the component. We budgeted 2,000 Rand, we actually spent 4,880, right? That's your October budgeted figure, as you can see, the same as your September one. Right, now, how will we respond to something like this here? 1, monitor the use of the telephone, water, and electricity. It is very important that we have controls in place to ensure that we stick within the budgeted amounts. Obviously, when we budgeted those amounts, we took into consideration everything that we needed to. However, there may be certain items that we did not consider. For example, a sudden increase in electricity tariffs. Okay, you may have budgeted for a 5 or 7% increase, but there was suddenly a 15% increase. Okay, your budget, can you see, I've already alluded to this point here, should provide for any increase in tariffs or usage. So when you're drawing up this budget, take into consideration tariff increases, take into consideration, for example, looking at the telephone, you may be embarking on a telesales, an aggressive telesales campaign. So obviously, this will result in an increase in the telephone as well, right? Try and keep your records up to date. Check your budgets should be based on past usage. Like I told you in previous lessons, I'm going to mention it again. When you're drawing up your budgets, you're taking into consideration past usage. So in the previous month, if you spent X amount of money, you use that as your basis, and then you work from that. That's called historical cost budgeting, right? And then one is to have a negative variance, but investigate the reason for the negative variance. Why do we have the negative variance? So taking all of this into consideration, it is important that when you're analyzing, you have an action plan in place to ensure that we have done the necessary, we've analyzed our figures, and now we're taking action based on the information that we have available. All right. Zanele wants to reduce the maintenance budget to 500 Rand per month and then use the saving for staff training. What should she consider before making this change? State 2 points. All right, let's see. Firstly, look at your maintenance budget. You budgeted an amount of 5,000 Rand, okay? You spent, your actual spend on this budget was 2,000 Rand. Although it's a positive variance, you can see she did not use the entire maintenance budget. There was a balance or a positive variance of, clearly you can see, 3,000 Rand, right? So she budgeted 5,000, she spent 2,000. Now, watch. Her actual maintenance expenses is far more than 500. She's actually spending 2,000 Rand. So already you can see that the amount that she is spending exceeds the amount that she wants to spend. For example, she wants to spend 500, but she's already spending 2,000 Rand. Then, obviously, she will be under budgeting. She will be under budgeting. Maintenance will be neglected. When you neglect maintenance, it has long-term disastrous effects. Because if you don't maintain your land and buildings, your properties, your vehicles, your equipment, whatever else needs maintenance, if you do not maintain, you can have disastrous consequences for the future. Right? And also, it would mean that you have to replace old equipment sooner. Because if you're not maintaining that equipment, and the equipment is reaching the end of its useful life, it would mean you'd have to replace equipment. And obviously, you know, the cost of replacement is very, very expensive. Yes, we do know that there are definite benefits of training and also the impact thereof on the use of machines. It would be irresponsible to reduce an important and a necessary expense by so much, right? She's budgeted 5,000. Take this into consideration. She's budgeted 5,000. She spent 2,000, right? So there's your budgeted amount. There's your actual amount. She wants to now reduce it to 500. You can look at the difference between the budget and what she wants to. Look at the difference between the actual and what she wants to reduce it to. So clearly you can see that although training is very important, its cost should be compared to the impact of a reduction of regular maintenance. Yes, by all means, put staff training into operation. It's very important, but not at the expense of cutting down your maintenance budget to such a level where you obviously are not going to be doing justice to the maintenance of your equipment. Right, you have a new competitor who started operating in a nearby shop, and obviously it's creating a bit of a stir for Zanele. So what was her response? Let's see, how did she respond by the competitor becoming a competition for her in terms of her business? Here we go. There's your motor vehicle expenses. You'll notice that we had nothing, and then obviously there was 4,000. Admin expenses, look at the difference between the two. Look, telephone, we've discussed that one already. Insurance, advertising, depreciation, we've discussed. So clearly you can see here that we bought a new vehicle to do deliveries, right? And your vehicle expenses went up to 4,000 Rand and your depreciation increased. Watch, you had a zero budget for your vehicle expenses, but because of the competition, because of the new vehicle that you bought, clearly you can see the expenses went up to 4,000 Rand. Not only that, your depreciation increased from 6,200 to 9,000 Rand. So this was a conscious decision to buy a vehicle to do what? To do the deliveries to our customers. And as a result of that, you can clearly see your vehicle expenses increased from 0 to 4,000, and your depreciation also increased. I think it was from 6,200 to 9,000 Rand. So obviously this is now impacting on our profits. There was a reduced markup from 60% to 30% in terms of your figures that are given to you. You can see that you reduced your markup to increase your sales. But now remember, by reducing your markup, you may increase your sales, yes, but this will result in your gross profit decreasing. Why is that? We know that selling price minus your cost price will give you your gross profit. And even once you decrease your cost price, right? Sorry, if you decrease your markup, then it means that your profits will decrease because you're marking up at a lower percentage. Clearly, you can see a reduced markup led to although an increase in sales, but a decrease in your gross profit. What about advertising? Let's look at advertising. Advertising, you budgeted 2,400, but you actually spent 9,600. So clearly, there was an aggressive advertising campaign because of the competitor. You now had competition. And because of this competition, it has resulted in a substantial increase in your advertising. Again, your advertising costs have increased, and as a result of which you now have a bigger expense for advertising. Okay? We've discussed that time. In fact, your advertising increased 3 times more than what you budgeted for. Okay. If you look at your sales figures, sales and your cost of sales, you're going to notice something very peculiar or something very important for you to comment on. Now, remember guys, this type of question expects you to analyze the information. And by analyzing the information, you can clearly start drawing certain conclusions. Zanella's efforts were not successful because even though the sales increased, the gross profit decreased. Let's look at it here. Watch. If you look at your, let's do this calculation here so we can see what we're talking about. If we take the 180,000, right, which is your selling price, minus your cost of sales of 112,500, this will give you a 67,500 profit. We're looking at 67,500 gross profit. Okay, let's take that further. Let's do this one here. 195,000 is your actual sales figure minus your cost of sales of 150,000. Clearly you can see here 45,000. Right. So, watch. Important. Your sales increased from 180,000 to 195,000. But at the same time, your cost of sales increased from 112,500 to 150,000. Okay? Therefore, this means that your gross profit has actually decreased from 67,500 to 45,000. Okay? And clearly now, this strategy has not worked for her. As you can see, although the sales increased, your profits actually decreased. Okay, now, here's our response. Zanella's efforts were not successful because even though the sales increased, expenses such as cost of sales, vehicle expenses increased significantly. And therefore, you can see that based on the actions that she has taken, it has actually resulted in a decrease of our profits. Right. So, based on the information that we have, let's just illustrate this just to make it clearly evident to you that yes, her action resulted in sales increasing. Definitely. The sales that you budgeted for was 180,000, but the actual sales were 195,000. However, that change did not give us the desired effect. Why? The idea to increase your sales is to increase your profits. But as a result of all of this here, notice what happens. Notice what happens here. That yes, the sales increased, but your cost of sales increased, right? And if your cost of sales increases, your gross profit decreases. Remember, when cost of sales increase, the gross profit decreases. Also, your vehicle expenses increased, right? And remember, not mentioned here, but we discussed it, your advertising also increased. So that expense also increased. Okay, guys, we've done an intensive lesson on the interpretation and the analyzing of a projected income statement. What's the way forward? The way forward is for you to start doing as many activities as you can get your hands on to improve this skill of yours, and practice, practice, practice. Because if you do that, I promise you, you're going to be a shining star, an accounting shining star. Until the next time, goodbye.